The New York Jets have a new leader. As of Wednesday afternoon, the New York Jets have hired former Detroit Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn. Contract through 2029. He will become the next head coach of the New York Jets, who have the longest playoff drought in all of sports. The Knicks aren't playing their best basketball to start up 2025. And the New York Mets and Pete Alonso, it's not looking likely. We'll talk about all that on episode 26 of Mozarsky Memos. Let's do it. Let's start with the biggest news coming from the football world. The New York Jets, as of Wednesday afternoon, hired defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn from the Detroit Lions, if you want to say from, whatever it is. Glenn spent time with the Jets as a cornerback from 1994 to 2001, 7 years there. Began his coaching career with the Jets, too, as a scout in 2012. Went around the league, became the defensive coordinator for a Lions unit that dealt with a lot of injuries. The New York Jets have hired Aaron Glenn, and it is official. So first, before I talk about what I think this means for the Jets, there's a lot that needs to be done, right? You still got to work at the offensive and defensive coordinators. You still got to hire a GM. The Jets are looking at Lance Newmark, some other options. Still have to figure out the quarterback situation. Is it going to be Aaron Rodgers? Is it going to be Tyrod Taylor? Is it going to be someone off free agency? And then there's other personnel things. The offensive line needs depth. The defense, you're losing CJ Mosley. Jamie Sherwood's a free agent, so who are you going to go there? They need a cornerback too. DJ Reed's probably gone. Aaron Glenn, there are pros and cons to every hire. I think that there was only one home run hire the New York Jets could have had, and that was Mike Vrabel. And once Mike Vrabel went back to the New England Patriots, where he was also a former player, and the Patriots got him, I did not think there was a home run hire for the Jets, but I think Aaron Glenn is damn close because of what Aaron Glenn has done in his NFL career, has been a leader of men. Whether it's a Detroit Lions documentary, Hard Knocks, or just the way he's talked about around the league, he is spoken in such a high regard. And he is spoken as a leader of men. I saw a clip today that his defense, three key things: effort, speed, burst. If the players want to play for Aaron Glenn, then it's a good hire because the New York Jets, talent is not their problem, right? They have the 2022 Offensive and Defensive Rookie of the Year in Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. You have one of the best young running backs in the league in Breece Hall. On defense, you have all pros in Quincy Williams, Quinnen Williams, Jermaine Johnson, and Will McDonald are both double-digit sack guys in their second year. They're only going to go up if they stay healthy. All pro corner and Sauce Gardner. The Jets have a few other things. You have the pieces. But what the New York Jets do not have compared to the other 29 teams in the league, and there are other teams that have this problem too, a culture problem. And that's why the New York Jets have the longest playoff drought in the NFL in 14 years and the longest playoff drought tied with the Buffalo Sabres in major sports. The Sabres are not making the playoffs, by the way, so they're going to be tied. The New York Jets have a culture problem. They need someone to come in and change that. And Woody Johnson and Jets ownership thinks Aaron Glenn is that person. He's been in the building before. He has the attitude. People view him in high regard, and that's exactly what you need, right? There's a lot of things that still have to be figured out. You got to figure out your coordinators, GM, quarterback. I can't see the New York Jets bringing it back with Aaron Rodgers, honestly. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But you need someone who's going to lead this team and put them out to prepare every single week. Because over the past few years, the New York Jets haven't really done that. You could go back to 2015 when the Jets went 10-6 and just missed out the playoffs. They have not had a good head coach. Whether it was Todd Bowles in his final 3 years, Adam Gase, then Robert Saleh, then Jeff Ulbrich. The New York Jets have lost the coaching battle in almost every game since 2015. Look at the Robert Saleh, Jeff Ulbrich era. For the past 3 years under Robert Saleh, it sort of felt like the New York Jets were playing from behind a lot. Even the 3 games this season, they started really slow, right? They took a lead against the San Francisco 49ers, but then the offense stifled out. Against the Minnesota Vikings, you go down 17-0. Against the Denver Broncos, the offense doesn't get going all day. And so they had to play from behind a lot. Then you pivot to Jeff Ulbrich. And my biggest problem with Jeff Ulbrich, and I've said this on the podcast before, he didn't stick to his word. He called them a run-heavy team. They had the least carries in the NFL. He said he could handle the defense, and when he did handle the defense, no other facet of the team worked. And when the other facets of the team worked, the defense became bad. They gave up game-winning drives to guys like Anthony Richardson, Jacoby Brissett, Kyler Murray, 3 straight drives. I could go on and on and on. The Jets' defense was bad under Ulbrich. So what you need with Aaron Glenn, you need coordinators that help his game plan. You need to figure out your quarterback position and not be led by the players, be led by Aaron Glenn, and you need a culture. Because the New York Jets need to just come out every week ready to play, and they got to stop being a bottom feeder, which is what they are and what they've been since I was in third grade and since a lot of people were different. The last time the Jets made the playoffs, the iPhone 3 came out. And so that just puts it in perspective. I'm really, really excited to see what this defense is under Glenn. I don't know if he's going to get those play calling responsibilities or if he's going to give it to someone else. I could see if they get Steve Wilkes or Todd Haley or even former Bears interim Thomas Brown, I could see Glenn just leading the ship and giving the play calling to them. And that's fine because they have so much talent. And there's a lot of pieces, like I said, for the New York Jets, right? You have Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, two of the best young pieces in the AFC. No matter what people say, they're two great young pieces. You still got to figure out wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. I can't see them bringing back Devontae Adams. Offensive line, they're probably bringing back all 5 starters from the end of the year in Olu Fashanu, Elijah Vera Tucker, John Simpson, Joe Tippmann, and Morgan Moses. And if they don't, it's going to be Moses, and they're still bringing back the other 4. They're young. And if healthy, the New York Jets have a solid foundation, but there's obviously so many things to talk about, like the quarterback position, the coordinators, and it'll be figured out. But Aaron Glenn, the way he's regarded in the league, is a leader of men and a leader of a team, and he wanted the Jets job, and now it's time to go prove it. Next up, let's talk about the New York Knicks, who haven't had the best start to 2025. The Knicks are 5-6. They did win their last game against the Brooklyn Nets. It was a close one. I'm a Nets fan. The Nets are bad. That was good for both sides, and I could get into that, but we're not talking about the Nets today. We're talking about the Knicks. Because the New York New York Knicks, are a legitimate NBA title contender, but they haven't been playing well, right? 5-6 since January 1st. But there's reasons for optimism and there's reasons for pessimism. So let's start with the pessimism, which is the Knicks' biggest flaw right now is on defense, where they do not defend the 3 well. Look at their 3 past losses to the Oklahoma City Thunder, Minnesota Timberwolves, and Detroit Pistons. OKC shot the lights out against them. The Knicks couldn't stop them. Minnesota, 55% from deep at Madison Square Garden. Knicks lose that game by 17. Detroit, 44%, over 40% from the line. I meant from the behind the 3-point arc. Didn't matter. And then Malik Beasley, 2 threes to ice the game. The New York Knicks aren't that great at defending the 3. They're 27th in the league, allowing a 37.7 3-point percentage to opponents. That has to change, and this is where the reasons for optimism come, because I think it will. They have 2 of the best 3-and-D wings in the NBA in OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. Josh Hart's such a good defender too. Karl Anthony Towns, if healthy, they are a versatile lineup. They play a lot of minutes, and I understand why people get upset about that because it's the regular season, and once you get to the playoffs, anything could happen. But that's a reason for optimism for the Knicks because they do have one of the best starting lineups in the NBA. Jalen Brunson, I'd take him over most point guards. Karl Anthony Towns is an MVP candidate. Anunoby and Bridges, like I said, great 3-and-D wings. The problem with Bridges right now, he has on nights and off nights. And then Josh Hart is just someone you want on every basketball team, right? Right now, if I had to say it, New York Knicks are probably the 3rd best team in the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference isn't very good, but the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics are both better. And the Knicks have Cleveland and Boston coming up, if I'm right. And so there's a few things, right? You need all your players to contribute, especially against these top teams. The Knicks lost to the Cavs a few weeks ago. They are going to defend the 3 better. That's a big flaw, and they need some scoring, and they'll get their scoring, whether it is Jalen Brunson. You saw that his 4th quarter against the Nets. Mikal Bridges. I mean, I could go to any guy on this Knicks starting lineup and go, they had a game where they were the marquee scorer, and not a lot of teams could say that. And the other thing you need with the Knicks is you just need some depth, whether it's Deuce McBride hitting 3s. Mitchell Robinson apparently might get traded. Same with Jericho Sims. Tyler Kolek, you got to get him more involved. I know Tom Thibodeau doesn't play rookies a lot, but I'd like to see him get more involved. The Knicks have pieces, and that starting lineup plays a lot of minutes, and that's going to either downfall on you, which I don't think it will because it's sustainable as long as they stay healthy. And the starting lineup of Bridges, Brunson, Anunoby, Cat, and Hart is one of the best in the league. But I'd still put them behind the Boston Celtics and Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference. But at the same time, if they're able to defend the 3 better, that entire narrative changes. Last segment for the day. Over the past few days or weeks, the Pete Alonso Mets saga has been ever going. Pete Alonso's market has not come to fruition. The Mets gave him an offer. Scott Boras gave the Mets an offer. And now it seems that the Mets are preparing for Pete Alonso to sign elsewhere. And so just talking about that for a second, that obviously sucks from a sentimental standpoint as Mets fans. Pete Alonso's a legend. He's 30 home runs away from the all-time home run record for the Mets. He's probably going elsewhere. So first, where could Alonso go? There's not a lot of options. So until Alonso signs with someone, I believe the Mets are still a destination. And because there's not a lot of places that have first base vacancies anymore this late in free agency. The Yankees were a possibility. They got Paul Goldschmidt. Astros are a possibility. Maybe Tigers. The Blue Jays are the favorite right now. There's other teams too, right? The Cubs have Michael Busch. There's other teams out there that all have more bang for their buck at first base, and or at least they think they do. Pete Alonso had the worst season of his career last year in terms of slugging percentage, 459, not good. OPS, first time under 800 in his career. He was still able to hit 34 home runs and 88 RBIs. That's great. Alonso had a great postseason. He changed the Mets narrative with that home run against the Brewers. That was one of the biggest home runs he'll ever hit in his career, that or anyone will ever hit in their career. But at the end of the day, he struggled for a lot of the season. He was not the Mets' main RBI guy, right? Francisco Lindor, Mark Vientos, Brandon Nimmo, even Starling Marte towards the end of the year. The Mets were getting contributions from everywhere else, and that's why Pete Alonso not coming back was a conversation. And that's why a lot of Mets fans became okay with losing Pete Alonso. I think he reeled them back in the postseason because he had a great postseason, right? Homered against the Brewers, homered, I think, twice, three times in the NLDS against the Phillies. I remember game 2 and game 3. Someone fact check me on that. NLCS had a homer in game 5, hit over 300 in the playoffs, I'm pretty sure. He was good. But at the end of the day, the New York Mets should not overpay for him because there are other possibilities at first base. The most likely one right now is Mark Vientos moving to first base and the Mets trying to find something at third, whether it's Brett Beatty, Ronnie Mauricio, signing someone like Alex Bregman possibly. There's a lot of ways they could go, but I think Pete Alonso coming back to the Mets is not going to happen, but I'm not going to believe it until I see it. And that's the biggest thing. A few replacements that the Mets could have went off the board over the past few days. Anthony Santander signed with the Toronto Blue Jays on a 3-year, $95 million deal, I'm pretty sure. And Jurickson Profar, 3 years, $42 million to the Atlanta Braves. Those were two possibilities. If Pete Alonso's market isn't good and he chooses a contract just like the Mets, I think that's a mistake by him. The New York Mets should not overpay for him, and I think that's clear as day. Because any argument you can make about Pete Alonso, the New York Mets have solved that. I was on an Athlon Sports video because I was at Mets-Phillies Game 4, and they asked me Juan Soto or Pete Alonso. It's Juan Soto a million times out of a million. The Mets already won free agency by getting Juan Soto. Did they overpay? Sure, but they got a generational baseball talent who leads the league in on-base percentage, has an unteachable strike zone. Fielding liability, sure, but he's generational. Nobody's going to go against that. If they lose Pete Alonso, the Mets still won free agency. They have other holes. They do. The back of their pitching staff isn't that great behind Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea and David Peterson. There's a lot of holes there. But then again, all fixable. The New York Mets have fixable holes, which is exactly what you need. They still are working out first base or third base. You upgraded in the outfield with Jose Siri. So you got other guys too. Jesse Winker coming back on a 1-year, $8 million deal. He might even play first base, he said. That could be another one, and you keep Mark Vientos at third. The New York Mets upgraded, and that's what you want to see. And look at the top 4 hitters for the New York Mets right now. Francisco Lindor finished second in MVP voting. Juan Soto, we already talked about. Brandon Nimmo, 90 RBIs. He's going to probably back Cleo because Mark Vientos, in 3/4 of a season, 27 home runs, 74 RBIs, had a ridiculous postseason. Whether the Mets get Pete Alonso or not, and it's looking like it's not going to happen, they are a damn good baseball team, and they will be just fine. I'm interested to see where Alonso ends up, but I'm going to leave it at that. Whenever Pete Alonso signs, I'll believe it when I see it. Right now, it's probably not the Mets, and the Mets will be just fine without him. Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of Mozarsky Memos. On the next time, I'll talk about the New York Rangers playoff push and go about a few other teams that I didn't mention today, but these are the 3 major storylines in New York. We'll have a show soon.